Okay, thank you. So the first main agenda item is a report from the Professional Standards Department, and this looks at the overall issues regarding how complaints are handled and dealt with. And obviously, as we know, there is current legislation being looked at with regards to changes in the future, albeit the Policing and Crime Bill, or the part of it that deals with this, seems to be being put back time and time again. So we're now told it may well be early 2019 before changes actually come into being. But with that context, I'll hand over for you to give us a report on this. Thanks.
Yeah, so the head of professional standards, Julie Sykes, as her commissioner. You've got the report before you, and there's some progressive and good developments in that Julie will go through.
Thank you. As you said, you have a copy of the full report with you. I'll just go through the highlights, starting firstly with the complaint data. You will see that complaint allegations have decreased 25% in October. There were 149 allegations recorded, compared with 209 in September and 172 in August. Yearly total for complaints allegations have decreased by 189, that equates to 7% in the last 12 months. And complaint cases have decreased by 178, that's 8%. This decrease has mainly been down to the number of lower level complaints which have been received and immediately received service recovery. As a result of that, they've been withdrawn without the need to formally record a public complaint. We refer to these kind of complaints as there and then, because they literally resolve there and then. So the unit dealt with 22 there and then cases in September and a further 40 in October. We believe this remains a quick and cost-effective way of resolving very low-level issues. In relation to the top 3 complaint categories, neglect or failure in duty, incivility and politeness and intolerance, and other assaults account for a total of 67%. To address and reduce issues being raised, the PSD Training and Engagement Officer raises awareness at all training inputs, roadshows and engagement events. You have in the report details of the most recent performance figures provided by the IPCC in Bulletin Quarter 2, which covers April to September of this year. This again shows West Yorkshire in a very positive light in terms of the ethical recording practices which are in place. Within this reporting period, West Yorkshire Police have recorded 149 allegations per 1,000 employee. This is the highest in our most similar force, who record an average of 122, and second highest recording in the country after the Met for the total number of complaints recorded annually. 96% of all complaint cases are recorded within 10 days. This is significantly better than our most similar forces and the national figure. And on average, local resolutions are completed within 29 days, which is 6 days less than the same period last year, and again, significantly better than the most similar forces and national figures, which stand at 73 and 70 days respectively. From January this year, the most serious gross misconduct investigations undertaken by the reactive teams in professional standards have taken around 120 days to complete. I think it's of note that the average time for the IPCC to complete similar allegations within West Yorkshire currently stands at 393 days. In relation to the service recovery team, the latest figures show that since their inception in February of 2016, they've dealt with 3,311 complaints, over 2,000 of which were locally resolved, in average in 21 days. Performance outcomes are provided on a quarterly basis as part of the professional standards tactical intelligence assessments. This is intended to hold the PSD staff to account around timeliness in investigations, recording of complaints, and the final assessment of cases, together with regular updates which are provided to officers, staff and members of the public. The latest figures provided in October show that a mainly positive picture. In the 9-month period between January and September, 88% of complaints were recorded in 10 days, and local resolutions were dealt with in 21 days. And misconduct investigations dealt with on average within 48 days. The performance of the service recovery team is constantly monitored, and their processes have just been scrutinised so we can refine them even further to ensure there's continued improvement in the way that they're working. We've also undertaken workforce modernisation. We've recently recruited and accepted 5 police staff complaints officers. They will start with us in the new year, and longer term we hope to have a 50-50 workforce mix between officers and staff. By way of context, if we look at the work in the 12 months prior to the service recovery team being implemented, so that's January 2016, district performance showed that local resolutions were dealt with on average 37 days, and investigations took on average 8 to 9 days to complete. In total, 1,587 complaint cases were allocated to them in the 12 months prior to the service recovery team coming on board. The performance of the service recovery team significantly improved this picture. In the 12-month period from February 2016 to January 2017, the team dealt with 2,004 complaint cases, which is an increase of 417. Despite local resolutions, they were completed on average within 18 days, which around half the time it was taken when districts were dealing with them. And the investigations that were undertaken were completed in average within 67 days, so again taking a quarter of the time out of the process. Over the last 12 months we've received 187 appeals against the outcomes of local resolutions, however only 25 of those have been returned for further work. The number of appeals decreased slightly in October, where we only had 11 compared to 12 in September, but all learning opportunities are explored and fed back to the team to continue to decrease this even further. We had 15 referrals made to the IPCC in September this year and 14 in October. Over the last 12 months, referrals have remained static at 152, which is the same as the 12 months preceding that. However, there has been a significant increase in the number of independent investigations undertaken, from 22 to 32. But I think we'll find that that is a common picture across the country with the increase of investigators into the IPCC. They currently have 29 live investigations on behalf of West Yorkshire, 2 of which are being supervised. Moving on to the conduct data, total conduct allegations increased in October with 16 records compared to 12 in September, but overall it remains a downward trend throughout the year, with only 117 records compared to 259 for the same time period last year. The main areas of concern in relation to discreditable are in relation to discreditable conduct, which is mainly off-duty behaviour of officers and staff, duties and responsibilities, which tend to be linked to ongoing IPCC investigations. However, there's also been a number of sexual misconduct cases, which we believe is down to the launch and awareness raising in force of the national strategy. The top 3 threats from the most recent strategic threat assessment by volume are disclosure of information, theft and fraud, and notifiable associations. However, top 3 by risk are officers who commit criminal offences, sexual misconduct or infiltration into the organisation. You're aware that PSD took over police staff discipline in March 2016. Since this time there has been 97 cases recorded with 110 allegations being made. Within this time frame, 4 members of police staff have been dismissed without notice after attending chief officer hearings. In total at the moment we have 9 police officers and 5 police staff suspended from duty, with the 29 officers and staff on restricted duties. In relation to police staff, there was 1 misconduct hearing in relation to discriminatory language, which was heard by a senior officer in September, which led to dismissal without notice. And there's the hand.
Thank you very much for that, Julie. I mean, clearly, in terms of what you've reported there, big improvements since the team, if you like, or the teams that have been established at PSD have taken work back from the districts and a more consistent approach generally. So that's welcome and pleasing to see. I just wanted to follow up on the rates per 1,000 employees, which you did actually touch on in that report back, in terms of West Yorkshire being the second highest in terms of numbers of allegations recorded per 1,000 employees. Could you sort of just say a bit more about that as to the reasons why you think that might be the case?
The data that's been provided to you was taken, as I say, from Bulletin 2 from the IPCC data, April to September of this year. Within that, West Yorkshire are the second highest recording force for complaints after the Met, but it should be clarified that the complaints recorded are actually per 1,000 employees, so I apologise for that. According to the most recent IPCC annual complaints statistics for 16-17, which covers April 2016 through to March, West Yorkshire Police had 323 complaint allegations recorded for every 1,000 employees, putting the spectrum of the 43 forces that actually placed us 15th, which I believe, being the fourth largest force in the country, actually puts us again in a very healthy position. A lot of that is to do with our ethical recording practices. You'll be aware I've spoken previously around complaints which come into the department which relate to any manner of dissatisfaction raised by a member of the public. We will record. That is not the same for all forces, so again that has the impact of putting us higher up the list.
Right, so it's good then that you've clarified that in terms of the figures. So in actual fact, about 15th per 1,000 employees, and obviously the aspect of proactivity around recording, is clearly playing into this in terms of the overall figures.
That's right.
Okay. In terms of some of the threats and risks, disclosure of information appears to be one of the more sort of consistent ones. Have you got any plans to try and reduce the risk of inappropriate disclosure? And certainly also in light of the new data protection legislation, which is due to come in next year as well.
Yeah, as you highlight there, disclosure of information remains one of the top 3 strategic threats, and it has done for some time. In addition, we have issues around potential computing issues, disclosure of information and the data protection issues. So they all remain high on the PSC agenda. And work's been ongoing to reduce the threat and raise awareness right across the force. For example, this area of business has recently been covered in the PSD newsletter, The Standard. It forms part of all PSD training inputs across the force. Information management have compiled a mandatory island training package in relation to data protection issues. That's live across the force, and it's mandatory for all officers and police staff to complete that training package. Completion rates of that package are currently being monitored. So we are able to take appropriate action in districts or departments where the uptake on that has been low to make sure that we get everybody where we need to be. There's also a mandatory NCALP package for all staff to complete, which covers the 8 data protection principles that staff need to be aware of. Information management are also currently undertaking a full force audit, so this will enable us to identify all the information that's held across the force, where it's held and whether or not it's being accessed and used lawfully. In addition to that, Professional Standards Department have just recently launched and compiled an animation video. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but that specifically targets computing issues. The message remains the same, but the format is far more engaging, and hopefully the message will then sink in with staff.
Right, thank you. Obviously some really good figures around the local resolutions with regards to big decreases around the average time taken to resolve those, whether that's without an investigation as part of that, or indeed with an investigation. So are you relatively happy around the sort of robustness of the process around local resolution?
I am. I'm not complacent, but I am happy with it. As I said, we have undertaken in the last 4 months 2 full process reviews around it. We also undertake regular dip sampling through the compliance team, so they will take an objective look at it. The HMIC have been in, they've had a look at the process, they were happy with it as well. In addition to that, we have run it through colleagues in the IPCC, our RINC officer, and given them the opportunity to look at what we do and how we do it, and all the feedback we've had has been positive. But as I say, I'm not complacent. We will continue to look at it and make sure it's where it needs to be.
And do you feel that you know, lessons do get learnt around some of the excuse me, individual cases that are looked at? So certainly, when I look at some of the casework I receive into this office, and then obviously offer surgery appointments to members of the public, you know, that hopefully we are working with you to sort of identify where some of those, shall we say, customer concerns are raised.
Yeah. That definitely is happening. I meet with a couple of your staff on a regular basis, so I get that feedback through a whole departmental communication meeting, so we get everybody together and those messages are sent out. If it's wider organisational learning as opposed to perhaps how my team have handled something, then that goes into corporate services, and there's a full process in terms of getting the wider organisational learning out as well.
Okay. Then finally on the IPCC, so you've mentioned there about the increase in independent investigations from 22 to 32, and you say that could be possibly down to more staff.
That's right.
At the IPCC. Do you feel that the sort of quality of service that they provide is also improved in that respect as well?
I think, to be fair, the IPCC have always acknowledged that they would gradually increase the volume of cases that they take on. As legislation is going through nationally, they're starting to increase the nature and the depth of the cases that they're taking on. They've had a series of new investigators and training programmes within that. But as another independent public body, it's probably not wise for us to comment upon them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that clearly, because they are obviously overseeing live cases. But I just think there's a general point there around timeliness and processes that they have in place. And obviously, they have had some additional funding that has been allocated through the Home Office grants. So it's just always useful to get your perspective around that sort of effectiveness and efficiency aspect of it, rather than necessarily commenting on the merits of individual cases.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good local and national relationship between Julie's team as head of profession and their team as from an investigative point of view. So I think those relationships are professionally healthy. I think, speaking on behalf of the rank and file and the Federation specifically, they would ask that there's more timely processes for the benefit of both their staff and for the resolution for the public. So I think that would be their view on them at this moment in time.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Thank you. Anything, Jane?
Julie, can I just ask about conduct? So you've raised that the main area of concern, or one of them, is discreditable conduct, mainly off-duty behaviour. Can you just tell us what effort is going into addressing that?
We have a training and engagement officer now. It's a post that was vacant and didn't exist for a number of years, and I'm sure you are aware. She's been in post now for a number of months, so she will proactively go out. We do inputs to all new starters to reinforce the standards and what's required. We regularly attend the meet and greet events. In terms of districts and departments, we meet with all the district commanders and departmental heads. We go through all the concerns that may be arising in their particular business areas, whether it's around individuals or trends in incidents that appear to be happening. So it's all about raising the awareness and putting messages out to staff, whether it's through face-to-face briefings, screensavers, wherever it might be, in terms of how to avoid the pitfalls, reminding people that the standards of professional behaviour are expected on and off duty. So there's a lot of engagement work ongoing around it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much for that. And thanks for that update. And obviously it is good to see the general improvements across a number of categories there. But like you say, we can never be sort of complacent around this agenda because we referred to the IPCC and they clearly do tend to take on the more high-profile cases, but equally, members of the public do expect the right behaviours from police officers and staff. So, thanks for the work that you are doing and for the report today. Thank you.